residential tech talk, and lighting specialist to our residential tech.
Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. On this week's podcast, two guests join us to discuss a recent announcement from Snap One about how the company's Luma Insights security system has leveraged the Hailo-8 AI chip to allow for advanced security capabilities. The Insights service integrates with existing Snap One products and requires minimal setup for integrators, allowing for near-instant access to AI-powered visibility from Luma cameras in a Control4 system. Joining us today for a deep dive into this technology partnership are Mark Grobman, CTO of Machine Learning for Halo, and Derek Webb, Surveillance Product Manager for Snap One. Mark and Derek, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you for having us.
Well, thanks to both of you for jumping on the podcast to dive into the technology behind the new Luma camera line and Luma Insights from Snap One, including the challenges and benefits of integrating AI into residential security. I don't typically do a deep dive onto basically what is a product news announcement, but it because AI is such a buzz right now, and I want to find something that is tangible and real for the CI channel, as opposed to just saying, hey, we can use ChatGPT for our marketing efforts and blah, blah, blah. Now there's real AI, and it's applied in a way that I think is an effective use for the channel. So let's start with Derek. To get a sense of the broader announcement here, for those who aren't super familiar with Snap One's, vast array of product lines and opportunities, can you give us an overview of the Luma security surveillance line within the family of brands leading up to the announcement with Halo?
Yeah. Thanks, Jeremy. That's I think it's a great place to start because, kind of as you were mentioning, we do have a lot of products at Snap One. We've been doing things for quite a while, and we've had a surveillance brand at Snap One for a long time. If some of our partners remember the early days of Snap One, where we had back in the Snap AV days when we were had a brand called Wirepath, which was your traditional analog line of cameras, and I think it's important to start there because what was really unique with Wirepath way back when, and that was actually at Snap One back when we first launched that, is we had this integration into Control4. That was one of our very first unique things when it came to surveillance in this space, was how do we differentiate a surveillance system that has been around for years and years and years in the traditional security space, moving into the CDA channel, 15, 20 years ago. How could Snap AV at the time differentiate? And Control4 was a great avenue to start there. And as our surveillance lineup ebbed and flowed and evolved over the years, and we introduced the Luma brand about 8 years ago now, as we kind of first introduced the Luma brand and transitioned from Wirepath. We started to get into some smarter surveillance cameras, but even then, it was still just a fancy spin on motion detection, which a lot of integrators have struggled with in terms of false detections. They want to add it to automation. It's not really reliable. And ultimately what you find is the thing that you don't want to happen is an end customer says, well, this is great, but and it helps me get what I need on my phone, but I'd like to just turn the notifications off. I don't care about the notifications. It's too much. There's overload, and it became this really, in a sense, almost a black eye in a sense from a product standpoint. As the product was good from a camera perspective, but really what you want is these immediate notifications about what happens. And so as we evolved our product lines, we this year released Luma X20 early in 2023. And that was kind of this next evolution of the Luma surveillance product line, which really was all about rebuilding the entire lineup from a hardware perspective. I think that's where you kind of started to see we were able to introduce new camera lines, new NVRs, oversee integration in the cloud, deeper integration into Control4. But you started to see this idea of AI. And AI in the surveillance world is fairly common now. Everyone is kind of doing a form of AI on the edge. I think that you'll hear me talk about that, and Mark will talk a little bit about that as well. Is Most cameras today are going to have a chip on board that can do some level of what we would call object detection or object recognition. With the standalone Luma X20 cameras, we introduced that human, vehicle, and non-motor vehicle detection on the edge, but it kind of stops there. That's really the extent of what that camera can do from a pure hardware standpoint. But you start to get a feel of what we're trying to do with this ecosystem. In parallel, as we're going through and developing Luma X20, Luma Insights was always kind of happening in parallel with this platform. In that, we work with some great vendors and partners in our development practices for Luma X20, where Luma Insights, this is uh, an in-house development platform that's powered using the Halo chip that Mark will talk about more later, which is a really unique and exciting thing, if you will. I use that word "thing," right? But it's different in terms of the traditional Snap One model. Control 4, you're used to seeing that really ground up build from a hardware and a software standpoint, where Luma Insights, we kind of borrowed that mentality and that process and built this ground up surveillance platform that is really centered on AI. So we have this Luma X20 lineup that's a really strong standalone surveillance solution that brought a lot of new user experiences to the table. And at the same time, we were building this Luma Insights platform with the idea that we know that AI is only going to grow and become more important to what we want to do in this industry. And there's this DIY world that's made people think that it's really easy. And in a sense, the basic stuff is. But when you get to the really, really unique things that customers want, especially in this CEDIA channel, if you will, we knew we needed a platform to help us scale efficiently and scale outside of a camera on the edge. We needed something else to help us really scale that platform. So that's kind of how Luma Insights was born, and that's kind of what it is today. Is that idea? And so it's kind of this parallel effort with our new Luma X20 products into this new platform.
Well, I want to get Mark in on the conversation and talk about this term that you use, which I did a little bit of trying to get comfortable with the terminology research here. I don't talk security a lot, surveillance a lot, and I definitely don't talk AI and edge, and I don't really have a great way of explaining what edge is. And so, Mark, could you kind of help us understand, and for those who aren't familiar with the terminology of edge computing and even the AI accelerator, what do those things mean for us?
Sure. So essentially, I think the best way to discuss the edge is in contradiction to a cloud-based system. So what you see, a lot of the systems will essentially, maybe a step back, AI, to me, except, the name is kind of mystical, artificial intelligence, but at the end of the day, it's a family of algorithms that are very compute intensive. And so you need a lot of horsepower to run them. And if you go back even a few years, really the only way to run these algorithms was to do it on the cloud, to have a server which has a GPU. So you'd have to send your data to some remote location. It could be like a really remote location, like an AWS, or maybe a local server room, but that would essentially not be on the edge. The computing element is not near the source of the data. And so this has a lot of problems. It has system level problems. It has economic problems. And I think, especially with respect to security, the worst issue here is that it has privacy problems, right? Because you don't want your data being sent all over the place. And so edge computing is actually, broadly speaking, whenever the compute unit is sitting close to the source of the data. So in that case, as Derek mentioned, either directly on the camera or on some aggregation point, which is at the level of the home itself.
Okay.
So that's edge computing. And AI accelerators came into being. Hailo is a company. We've been around since 2017. I think I think really for the edge specifically, we're the first company to focus AI acceleration. And really, what happened is when this deep learning revolution started to happen, it was powered by GPUs, and specifically by NVIDIA GPUs. And I think there was a certain period of time where it went from a cool idea to something that was, something that you wanted to product to use in products. And the moment you want to use it in embedded systems like surveillance, you can't put a GPU there. Like a GPU is a very power intensive unit. It needs cooling, it needs an external power source, and it also costs a lot of money. So, when we started, we said, can we solve this by making a chip which is directly built around accelerating neural networks. And the idea here is that if you focus on doing just one task, is that you can do it much more efficiently, right? The more general you are, the less efficient it is. So we are not able to do general computing stuff. We're only able to accelerate neural networks, but the good side about it is that we're able to do it very efficiently, and efficiently both in terms of per watt, per power, and per dollar. So now you can take these chips, you can run these compute-intensive algorithms, and you can embed them in the system themselves, either on the camera or on aggregation points. And it's easy from a mechanical power dissipation point of view, and also it makes sense from a cost perspective for the customer.
Okay, that helps a lot. And now it's coming back to me on the edge conversation, and now it's making a lot of sense, Derek, for the Luma bridge, which you didn't really mention, but that's the piece that's local, that's in the home, that would house the edge processing. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah. So the Luma Bridge is kind of I think the best way to think of this new platform is Luma Insights is this kind of software service, if you will. Really, and I use the word platform. It's not a word that Snap One throws around lightly. You see it with Control 4. That's a platform that we have. You see it with Oversee. That's a platform, and Luma Insights is intended to be that as well. And that it's going to evolve and iterate, and we're going to add things to it. But its first piece of hardware that powers that software is the Luma Bridge, and so it is literally, our customers spotted it right away. It is a version of our Core One controller that you would use to use in your Control 4 system. And so essentially, we took that hardware base that we already have a lot of expertise in house on, and we went out to find a partner that could help us do these AI type things that we were thinking of that could slot in to that hardware platform that we already had with the Core One controller. And Halo was kind of that partner. And so, yeah, there's already a processor that's on the Core One controller, but it's not enough. It doesn't do the stuff that Mark was talking about that we needed to do. And so that's where the Halo chip comes in. It kind of sits on top, and it allows us to run these surveillance streams through that processor to execute all of the AI algorithms, the machine learning algorithms that we've built on those streams. So yeah, it's two pieces. The Luma Bridge is the hardware, and the Luma Insights platform is kind of the software service.
Okay, and so Mark, when you talk about the accelerator and how it needs to have sort of like a main focus, and I'm oversimplifying how you said that, but the idea that this is used for identification of objects in view of the cameras and in the surveillance system, is this like the perfect application for the the technology, the Hailo-8 processor there, or accelerator? Are you using this for other things, or is surveillance the main application that you find?
Yeah, so thanks for a question. That's very good, because essentially we focus on computer vision algorithms, and surveillance as a segment is one of the we think one of the segments that can be most disrupted by the use of intelligent computer vision, which maybe is a bit less sexy than AI, but this is what it is. It's just the ability to give the end user, you know, uh, the ability to give more intelligent queries. So not just detect motions of humans. And with AI, you can do so much more. It's not just humans. You can do specific humans. You can do you can do customizable objects. And this for a very long time was the holy grail of computer vision, to have systems that are able to understand the scene, to have semantic understanding. And once deep learning came along today that problem is essentially, we know how to solve it. It's not easy, but if you have the data, we know how to solve it, which is something that, even 10 years ago, we didn't know how to do. But, going to Hailo specifically, there are other big segments that, have appliance for low power intelligent computer vision. So, of course, autonomous vehicles is a very large segment for us. Industrial inspection, I think, is a very large segment. And of course, it's the hype around large language models is something that we consider ourselves well primed to be a platform to have that enable that sort of computing on laptops. Of course, that's not computer vision, but the basic building blocks are the same. And in fact, over the last 4 years, something very interesting happened, which is that you used to have two very separate fields. One was the field of language understanding, also called NLP, and the other one was of computer vision. And mostly, those were two separate fields. And over the last couple of years, they've basically turned into a single field using the exact same building blocks and the same methods. And so the very interesting thing, and I think it's also extremely interesting for intelligent video systems in surveillance, is that you can also now use language. And this is something like, if previously we would only be able to say to a network, okay, where's the human in that image? Now we can actually have networks that are able to caption the scene. They can say, okay, this is a scene in a living room with a person moving. This is very strong for surveillance, because now users can query, instead of watching playback of the video, you can now query and say, okay, I want something very specific, like, I like seeing, when the sun first rises, the first car that moves past the window, right? And that's a very complicated query. I mean, it's very simple to explain, but to automate it in a system is extremely complicated. But now, because these, AI systems have converged both language and and vision into the same types of neural networks, that's something that we can achieve. So for us, obviously surveillance is a huge segment, but also autonomous vehicles, robotics, industrial inspection, and personal laptops. That's wherever neural networks is now kind of starting to make an impact, specifically on devices that are on the edge. That's where we think we have at least something to offer.
Today's episode of Residential Tech Talks is brought to you by NICE, the global manufacturer of smart home, security, and building automation solutions. NICE is bringing together 30 years of innovation with award-winning products to create a holistic ecosystem for builders, integrators, and consumers. Learn more about how you can create one home with one solution at go.niceforyou.com/RTT. And then, Derek, when you're actually applying this then to the Luma product line, what do you see in terms of its capabilities right out of the gate? And do you is it something that you train the system to do as the end user or the partner dealer? Does it just happen sort of as the system's installed? It automatically starts to register what different objects are, and then providing that detail. How does that work exactly for the dealer and for the end user?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's one of those ones that's hard to write down. This is a perfect example of trying to answer this thing, live. And so I think today where Luma Insights is in terms of kind of what we launched in the last month, right, is we are essentially supporting human and vehicle detection through the Luma bridge on essentially what we would call first party products. So the Luma X20 lineup of cameras, actually our Luma X10 lineup of cameras. So to clarify that for people that may not know, pretty much the last 5 years before we launched Luma X20 this year, we sold the Luma X10 lineup of cameras and NVRs. And so Luma Insights actually supports those cameras, so it becomes a great retrofit solution. It also supports our Chime Video Doorbell. And so essentially what you're able to do now is take any subset of these cameras and build them into the Luma Insights platform and run human and vehicle detection on those cameras themselves. And the way that we kind of presented that, which I think is a great way to talk about some of the things that we're doing unique with the partnership with Hailo, is that, and Mark kind of talked a little bit about this, we built our own AI models that we're running on the Luma bridge. And so the Hailo team kind of helps us understand the hardware capabilities of the chip and whatnot. But we actually have a data science team in-house at Snap One now. They do a lot of different things within our business, but a big piece of that is we're building our own AI models, and we're doing that through a word that I've been using more often is through beta testers that are willing to donate their data. And so we actually started this process about almost 3 years ago, early in COVID, with a lot of our own employees that were willing to donate their data and said, hey, you have surveillance installs. We have, 1,700 employees, across the world. And a lot of them have surveillance installations in their home that are very similar to what our installers are out there doing for their end customers. And so we said, hey, employees of Snap One, if you're willing to donate your data, we'd like to use it to start building our first AI model. And so we ingested hundreds of thousands of essentially images from our own employees that were willing to donate that data. And you take that data and you run it through this training method to train an AI algorithm to be tuned to what you want it to be. I think that's a really important aspect of Luma Insights compared to other platforms that may be out there, all very capable, but you're not going to find one that's tuned to us. I think is what's really important. And so we go through that process with Luma Insights. And on top of that, we also had a long external beta phase, one of the longer external beta phases we've ever had for a product for Luma Insights, where we, allowed our installers, our own customers that are very gracious to beta test with us. We asked them to donate their data, and they also helped us build more data into that. And so what we launched with is essentially an AI algorithm that's built off of internal employees, our own partners that donated their data, and then ongoing and living, we have a feature today in the app where essentially we call it an incorrect detection or really event feedback. And if an event comes in that you say, hey, that wasn't right, it just didn't seem like it was what it was supposed to do, you can select that immediately when the event comes in, and you can tell us that event was wrong. And that actually is an automated process that goes into an encrypted bucket in our cloud that goes through automatic data or essentially model training. It's automatic and improves the model kind of ongoing. And so as we do updates kind of behind the scenes to the system, the algorithm, the machine learning that's living on this box will get updated over time. Very similar to like a Control 4 controller update. Actually, I think even a better example is our Hailo remote. Our Hailo remote gets these kind of over-the-air updates without you even knowing about it. The Luma Insights platform gets the same thing, but those things could be features. It could be improved AI or a subset of other things. So that kind of gives you an idea of kind of what we're with today and what we're doing today at a high level with the Luma Insights platform.
I guess that's really interesting background and helpful. And I'm just curious, and then the end user hands-on experience. So you're reporting like a false, I guess, indication of something, and so that goes into the system. Are you tuning the capabilities as well? I remember like the first time I installed a Ring doorbell, not to name a competitive product, but it's a very well-known product.
Yeah.
And you basically you've got like a little perimeter around that camera where you say, I want it to be limited to these zones because I don't want to pick up things in the sides of, my neighbors walking up their driveway. I want just the front of the doorbell where there's a delivery or whatever. And maybe I don't want the cars going by because that's a lot of distractions that I don't want. Is it something where you can turn the frequency down? You can change certain, depth perception or anything like that?
Yeah, I think that's Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wondered if what were the capabilities there, just from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and an area that we see opportunities to continue educating this industry that's new to the AI space as well. And so the way that we kind of work today is there's really only one configuration option you need to do, and that's kind of what you were saying is pick your zone if you want to. By default, we're just going to start grabbing AI objects, human or vehicles, across the entire image. We're just going to say on this camera, we're looking for any human, any vehicle. And if you want to refine that, you can go in and you can start drawing a box. So we support up to 4 different intrusion zones, as we're calling it today. Essentially, it's a parallelogram. It's up to 6 sides that you can kind of draw, almost like a 3D zone, and say I want to detect objects in this zone. So I kind of use my house as an example, where I have a camera pointing at my front yard. I have a box that's over my driveway. Then I have a box over my front yard. I don't have anything over the street because I don't need to be notified over cars passing by. I don't need that extra noise, if you will. And so that's really the extent of the settings that we're offering. And I think that there's this level of like sensitivity, and do you need to tune the system appropriately? We do that? We could. But the way that an AI model will work in that, and how you would tune that versus the traditional kind of surveillance motion that you see in the past, is really when you tune an AI model to be more or less sensitive, what you're changing is the confidence level of the model itself to trigger an event. And so what you're saying is, you say on a scale of 0 to 100, there is a human walking across the camera, and as the AI model picks up that human, it's almost always saying, I am, X number confident that this is a human. So, you imagine that I am 90% positive this is a human. It's always seeing that. And then if that 90% positive human steps into my intrusion zone, that triggers an event. And so what that sensitivity would do is you could artificially say, well, I don't need the AI model to be as confident to alert me. I'm going to say, well, if it's 50% confident, I'm going to trigger that event based off of that confidence level now. And so what you find in those scenarios is you start getting a lot more what we call false positives. An animal might trigger an event, or some other object that you weren't expecting. And so we haven't seen the need to introduce that just yet, because we're trying to tune our algorithm to be as good as possible. As you get into scenarios, if you want to detect objects really, really far away, that's when that sensitivity may come into play, and we'll investigate and explore those areas. But we wanted to keep the setup as simple and basic as possible, without adding that extra complexity that can come into play. Because you think about trying to explain that to an end customer why you're changing these settings, it can get pretty intimidating really fast when you're kind of going through a large subset of settings.
And I guess sort of as we wrap up here, I'd love to know from Mark's standpoint, and I know you're speaking for your company here, and maybe like a little outside your comfort zone, but what makes I guess Luma or Snap One a good partner for Halo?
So really what Derek said, that thing, which I know, like having an access to 1,700 people willing to donate their data. We're a hardware company. We're not we are experts in putting AI into hardware, but we're not surveillance experts. And having that sort of vision, to me, I was, extremely excited to hear about, having access to that amount of data. I don't know how, if the listeners appreciate how unique that is, because today, if you were to go and you want to build an AI system, you can find pre-trained models on the internet. They're usually trained on like images from Flickr. They're very nice for demos, and they make the point that deep learning works. But when you go to a product level that has to work, as Derek said, really in the beginning, it's all about not how many times you get it right. It's really about how many times you get it wrong. Because if the user is annoyed by the system, then it doesn't work. And AI is not some panacea where you say, okay, now it's artificial intelligence, so it's great. No, you need the data, and so what we're looking for in great partners is partners that have that vision, and the only thing that they're really missing is a piece of hardware to run it on the edge. For us, that's the perfect partnership, and there's not a lot of companies from what we've seen that are as ahead of the game as Snap, and have been early adopters. And early adopters in this field doesn't mean that they develop the model. Developing the model is easy. It's the data that's hard, and there's not a lot of companies out there that have the data.
That's great. Thank you. And then, Derek, just to wrap up, what makes Luma Insights unique? You've described so many things, and I can kind of put it together, but competitively speaking, in the CI channel specifically, broader surveillance market, I guess commercial as well as residential, what makes Luma Insights a unique solution in the market?
I think that's a great question, and it's a where we feel like that we're really going to be able to carve this really unique space of Luma Insights is, there's this DIY world that has some really great solutions out there. And you mentioned one already with Ring, Nest. Those are the two that most people in their brains hear. But there's a ton of players in that DIY space that are doing a version of AI. A lot of that AI is cloud focused. And, they have, as a whole, they have all the news articles that, people get, nervous about. Most of them are still extremely safe. But at the end of the day, that level of cloud computing can make you nervous. So the DIY space really wins with these user experiences that power their platforms. Ring is a great example, as an extremely good user experience. But at the end of the day, it's a DIY solution that our partners would like to have something they can make a little more money on. The end customers love Ring, but the partners would like something a little bit more, better for their pocket. And then there's a lot of high-end companies out there that are doing powerful AI-based surveillance solutions that are really good, but they're extremely targeted to the market they're in, and you're paying that extreme premium to get into that space. And so when you kind of get into where our market is, there are customers that have a lot of money, but again, these surveillance solutions that are really high end are very targeted and don't always fit into what it is our installers are trying to do, which is these very custom solutions and integrated systems. So with Luma Insights, we are taking this AI-based surveillance solution and trying to pair it with the smart home that is unique to this CEDIA channel. And so you can see some really unique opportunities that we're using within Control 4, and that Control 4 tie-in is huge. When you start to think about accurate and efficient AI based off your surveillance system, in your brain, think about the automation that you could do with that in your system, right? If a human crosses my driveway after a certain time of day, I want to turn on lights. In the past, a partner might have to install pressure sensors in the driveway, or they have to put these, really long range motion sensors out on the driveway. I've seen them do it before. Those are expensive solutions. Where Insights now just runs off your cameras. Maybe you want to use it to set off an alarm in the system after hours. You think about this area that is growing, which is video verification services or monitoring services, where you want to tie into a monitoring company for an event gets triggered. A lot of monitoring companies don't really want to work with cameras that aren't accurate because they don't want to be looking at false positives. And so you can think about the tie-in there as well. And so today, right, that we have this really unique tie-in to the smart home, and we're going to continue to grow that and introduce even more features and make it deeply integrated into our ecosystem. And I think that's what makes it unique, right? And it's a lot of the same story with a lot of other Snap products is our ecosystem helps power everything else we do, and Luma Insights is deeply, deeply embedded into that ecosystem. That's going to allow us to continue to help it stand apart.
Well, I really appreciate both of your time and insights into this is really helpful. I feel like I've learned so much. I've gotten new terminology that I'm processing in my own brain, and it's great to see such a great partnership. Mark and Derek, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Mark Grobman is CTO of machine learning for Halo, and Derek Webb is surveillance product manager for Snap One. You can learn more about Luma Insights from Snap One's Luma surveillance line at lumasurveillance.com. And that wraps up today's show, which was produced by Residential Tech Today, IPW, and Pretty Easy Podcasts. Please check out prettyeasypodcast.com if you want professional and affordable production help on your own podcast. And if you're new to Residential Tech Talks, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you watched or listened to this episode. Also, check out all the latest residential tech news at our magazine's website, restechtoday.com, where you can also subscribe to the print or digital magazine and to our Tuesday and Thursday email newsletters. Until next time, please stay safe, stay inspired, and let us know if you have a great story to tell.
Residential technology, lighting specialist to arc residential tech.
Home automation device, smart home or smart house.
This show was produced by Pretty Easy Podcasts and made possible by listeners like you. If you ever thought of doing your own podcast, please visit prettyeasypodcast.com.